there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and I'll be joined momentarily by Jeff Mordock, Washington Times Justice Department reporter. You know, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Simply go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. Joining me now, Jeff Mordock, Washington Times Justice Department reporter. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Andy. How are you doing?
Doing great, thanks. Hey, listen, I just read this story, one of your stories, FBI dupes criminals into using encrypted app, which resulted in hundreds of arrests worldwide. I think this is fantastic.
This is a great story. I kind of wish it got a little more play in the national media. The Times gave it some good play. This is really interesting. So the FBI, along with law enforcement officials in Europe, New Zealand, Australia, developed this encryption app, and they hired underworld influencers to peddle and kind of encourage criminals to use this encryption app, which was being spied on by the FBI. And by using, confidential informants, influencers, they put this in the hands of thousands of criminals all over the world. I mean, I think it was something like 300 criminal organizations had access to it. And they're using this app to negotiate drug deals, to plot murder attempts, to launder money. And the whole time, FBI, Interpol, Australian police are all monitoring everything these criminals are doing. And after 18 months of monitoring it, they swooped in on Monday. They arrested 800 criminals in 18 nations, seized more than 250 illegal weapons, $148 million in cash, almost 40 tons in drugs, 6 tons of precursor chemicals, which are used to make drugs. 50 clandestine drug labs were dismantled. In Australia, the police commissioner there said that by this app enabled them to thwart 21 murder plots, including one targeting a family of 5.
That is truly amazing. And what is surprising to me is how they pulled it off with no leaks from the inside, because obviously this was a very large net.
It was, and I think that's a really good point, that they were able to influence. And it seemed, the other thing I found interesting is it didn't seem like the criminals ever got suspicious or skeptical of this. I don't know how good the influencers were. The FBI won't talk about it, but they must have been pretty good, because they got 12,000 devices into the hands of more than 300 criminal organizations in 100 countries. I mean, it takes a lot of persuasion to get that many people on board with something.
Yeah, and it also shows that the criminals were looking for some type of a product that would allow them the secured calling and texting ability. In the past, if I recall correctly, those programs existed. What happened? Did they fall apart?
Those programs existed, and law enforcement has taken them down. And after there were 2 big platforms, Sky EEC, and the other one I think was called EncroChat. And law enforcement took them down. And when they were off the market, it created a real demand among criminal organizations for new secure phones. And the FBI jumped in, filled that need, and they took it over. It was a genius idea.
All right, I'm going to take it to another one of your stories. Justice Department reverses ban on federal agents wearing body cameras. Why did they have a no-camera policy for years, and why the sudden change?
They had the no-camera policy for years because the DOJ argues that federal law enforcement operations are just too sensitive. And a lot of these federal aid task forces run by the FBI, U.S. Marshals, DA, ATF, a lot of them rely on local police departments. And just last year, it was big news in October, Bill Barr, former Attorney General Bill Barr, announced that local police departments could start wearing body cameras when working with federal agencies, and that was a really big deal. And a lot of that came because local police departments and local mayors, I know Keisha Bottoms in Atlanta, I think a couple of other mayors, we're going to pull the local police departments from these federal task forces unless they rescinded the body camera. So that started the ball rolling back in October. And now the Biden administration, which is committed to more police accountability, action on policing, they decided to go a step further and require all federal agents to wear body cameras. But it's still a work in progress. The Justice Department still has 30 days to figure out what they're going to do to implement this policy, because there's a lot of questions. They got to figure out, where's the footage going to be stored? What is the policy for releasing it to the public? When can an agent turn on the camera? When can an agent turn off the camera? How are they going to train agents on how to do it? I also think that under this new policy, it's only going to apply when they're executing arrest warrants or search warrants. I don't anticipate that we're going to see a lot of other confidential operations, like maybe an undercover sting operation or something. Those agents obviously won't be using body cameras.
Gotcha. DOJ says it's recovered millions in cryptocurrency ransom paid by Colonial Pipeline. I thought this money or currency was tough to track, Jeff.
It is tough to track. Usually, it's very rare to recover ransom in cryptocurrency. It's very rare, and the fact that the FBI was able to do it is pretty impressive. You know, and the FBI, they really discourage businesses from paying ransom to hackers. So, because they're saying there's no guarantee they'll follow through on that promise, and it encourages hackers to continue to terrorize the businesses. So it's really interesting that, one, that Colonial Pipeline paid, and two, that they were able to recover. Of the roughly $5 million, the DOJ was able to recover $2.3 million, and I think that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, it is impressive. Justice Department announces new proposals to close gun loopholes. Are they targeting the weapons or the individuals?
They're targeting the weapons, but obviously this comes back to the individuals. And it's kind of interesting because these are sort of small, moderate rules that they're proposing. So there's not a lot of broad impact from these. The Justice Department has started doing this under Merrick Garland. And, like, for example, with this one, they're going to force height requirements on short-barreled rifles, on the braces. So they're stabilizing braces, which you can use to transform a pistol into a short-barreled rifle so it can fire at a faster rate from the shoulder. And it's also, because it's a pistol, they're easier to conceal. You know, under this proposal, the stabilizing braces will have to require certain height requirements. That will make it harder for them to conceal. So if you see somebody coming in to a place and they've got a stabilizing brace around their shoulder, you're not going to miss that. You know, it's going to be harder to hide. And if they're up to something nefarious, you'll be able to see it quicker, is the thinking behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, what's kind of interesting, but they didn't really cover this, is gun owners can skip background checks by buying a pistol and then converting it into a short barrel rifle. But you know, with this, you're still not going to have to register. It's just more about making it harder to conceal.
Hoover would be appalled. Misconduct, politicizing plagues FBI. This is a story that actually exhibits quite a few scandals, right?
Yeah, this is my favorite story. I'm really glad you asked about this. This is my favorite story of the week. Last week was not a good week for the FBI. So on Monday, a leaked Justice Department Inspector General report found, and I'm going to use the Inspector General's words, slimy, high-ranking FBI agent groped female subordinates, drank on the job, you know, inappropriately touched women, and it was a black eye for the Bureau. The next day, prosecutors in Maryland charge a former FBI agent with attempted murder for shooting a man on the Metro. That's, you know, you've got an FBI here that's trying so hard to distance itself from the Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe, Jim Comey political bias allegations and the embarrassment that was the Horowitz report about the Carter Page FISA. And now they're really struggling because now you've got all kinds of misconduct allegations following them around. You know, the agent charged with attempted murder, you know, we don't know what the court is going to find. His lawyer is certainly making a case for his innocence. He's making a case for his innocence. Obviously, a jury will decide that. But it's still embarrassing to have an agent charged with attempted murder. That's not a good look for the Bureau by any measure.
Yeah.
And it's really hurt the FBI in two ways. One, it's hurt them because there's a lot of problems with ransomware, as we just talked about. Domestic terrorism is ramping up, and the FBI needs funding. And they need more funding from Congress. And you've got these crises of credibility. It's going to hurt their public support. It's going to hurt their support on lawmakers. It's also good, and that's going to really hurt their ability to do their job. It's also going to create problems because the FBI really needs to present itself as apolitical. I mean, That Inspector General report I just talked about was pretty scathing, and now you've come out and you've got all kinds of misconduct scandal, everything ranging from an agent having an inappropriate affair with a subordinate and promoting her, an agent having a hostile work environment, a subordinate he shouldn't have been dating in the first place in violation of FBI rules broke up with him. You've got all kinds. You had an official found to knowingly possess child pornography. You had supervisors retaliating against an analyst who should have been protected under the FBI's whistleblower. There was a whole scandal where they had FBI officials, FBI employees, were accepting all kinds of inappropriate gifts from members of the media, including tickets to sporting events, in exchange for leaks and information. I mean, that's a big embarrassment for the FBI, too, especially for an FBI that's trying not to look partisan. So all of these things really create headaches for the FBI.
Yep. All right, one more thing before I let you run. We're closing out time-wise here. What are you working on?
Well, actually, can I break some news on your podcast?
Sure.
I will be moving off of the Justice Department beat, and I will be headed to the White House.
Ah, good for you. Good for you.
Yes, I will be the Washington Times' newest White House reporter. I'm very excited and very looking forward to starting the White House beat. I think it's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be a really fascinating beat. And I'm committed to taking our readers inside the White House and what's going on behind the decisions that President Biden and his administration are making.
Yep, I'm happy for you, and I know you're going to do a great job. Jeff, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Folks, read all of Jeff Mordock's stories at WashingtonTimes.com. Thanks, Jeff. Good luck.
Thanks, Andy. Take care.
Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to WashingtonTimes.com/Andy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Again, go to WashingtonTimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.